All
All
right.
right. Hi, students. We are here today with someone that I am super geeking out about to meet and learn about. Her name is Caroline Joseph, and I can't wait for you to hear about her experiences, her job titles, all these different things she's doing in the nuclear world. So, Caroline, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy human, but I am so excited to hear about everything nuclear and your story in that. So, if you could you give us a little background of what you do for your job, and then also kind of the pathway from high school to where you are now?
Yes. Well, thank you so much, first of all, for having me. I really enjoy these opportunities and having the chance to talk with students. So thank you so much for allowing me this chance. So I'm a nuclear engineer by degree, and a former nuclear reactor operator. Right now, I'm the director of engineering at a nuclear power plant in Illinois. Growing up, I really wanted to be an astronaut. And I worked at the Challenger Space Center and things like that throughout high school. And I knew that if I wanted to be an astronaut, I was going to need to be an engineer. And Purdue at that time had graduated 22 astronauts. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to go to Purdue and I'm going to be an astronaut. So I majored in aeronautical engineering at first. But then my sophomore year, I transferred over into nuclear. Because it became very obvious that in order to expand space travel, we were going to have to employ, nuclear fuel in order to, say, get to Mars. So I chose to maybe see if I could be a little proactive and get that experience, so that maybe I would be a more valuable candidate into the astronaut program. So that's kind of what got me into nuclear engineering. And really, once I got in, I took an internship with a power generation company, and I actually fell in love with nuclear power. And it wasn't something I was expecting, but the experience gave me a look into nuclear that you're not really going to get in a classroom.
Right.
And maybe if there's an opportunity to give advice later, one of my advice that I give folks is to absolutely take any opportunity you can to learn and actually get real life experience, because you will not learn it in a classroom.
Right.
So I learned that I actually was really interested in power generation, and that company offered me a job once I graduated. So I took the position as a reactor engineer, which is responsible for helping develop how a core is going to respond and how you should load a reactor core and operate a reactor core through a cycle. And went through 2 years of training to get my nuclear reactor operator's license after I had been a reactor engineer for a little while. And that's given by the government. And you go through 2 years of schooling, training on how to respond to transients and emergencies and things like that. And you take a lot of tests, and they give you a license and you can operate a reactor. And did that for a while. And after that, progressed through some different career opportunities within the same company. And I worked at the same company for 12 years.
Wow, how cool. So when you work in this area of energy in that, is it normal for you to start by learning how to operate and kind of figure out how all this works, and then slowly work your way up into different unique positions?
Really, to get a job at this company and in nuclear power, you don't have to be a reactor operator, and you don't even have to be an engineer. There's a lot of opportunities. For me personally, I started out in engineering, but was interested in how to operate a reactor. Mm-hmm. So after being a reactor engineer for a while, I applied to get my license. So it's not necessarily something that's required to progress through the company, but there's nothing quite like operating a nuclear reactor. And 6 inches of fuel in a nuclear reactor has more power than a Boeing 747 or a space shuttle taking off. So it's pretty impressive when you think about what you're responsible for.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine that. I mean, that's insane. That's super cool. So with your job, could you kind of walk through currently, like, or actually, if you wouldn't mind, like a nuclear operator, what was kind of like your daily life looked like when you came to work? I think we all have these strange ideas from cartoons. And I mean, are you in a white suit covered up? Are you in regular clothes? Are you in an office? Are you in a room full of computers? Could you kind of walk us through what that looked like a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, well, and fortunately, as a reactor operator, a very boring day is a good day.
Yeah.
You really don't want a whole lot of excitement when you're operating a nuclear reactor. So really day to day, we would work in 12-hour shifts. You'd get in and you walk down all the panels. So if you can imagine, there's panels wall to wall from the floor to the ceiling with indicating lights and hand switches. And as an operator, you are trained to know what every switch does, whatever any kind of indicating light means, how to operate every component, how it interrelates. So you walk everything down to make sure you understand the condition of the plant, what's degraded, what's available, what work is going on maintenance-wise. You get that understanding, you take a turnover from, say a night shift individual. And really, then you accept the responsibility legally in, say, our logs, that you are now the on-shift individual responsible for the operation of that unit for that shift. So pretty cool responsibility. Day to day, it's hard to imagine that that's what you're responsible for, because it can be so boring, because that's the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
But really day to day, it's just generating safe, clean, reliable electricity and making sure that the neutrons keep firing and keep fissioning, and that we can keep putting power out to the grid, and that everything's responding the way that it should.
Now, when you're working on your 12-hour shift, are you with a team? Are you with just a few people? What does that look like as far as interaction between coworkers?
Yeah, so we are normally, for a single unit site, you have approximately 3 to 4 people in the control room with you at a time. So as a unit supervisor, which that's what I was, I had 3 reactor operators that would work for me and would be the ones actually performing the manipulations on the plant. And then we would have, say, 8 equipment operators, and those individuals would be responsible for walking down all the components in the field, making sure that everything is trending the way that it should, make sure there's no anomalies on any components, and they would be making any plant manipulations that would support any of the control room operations that we would be performing.
Wow, that's cool. Okay, so is there a certain time of day where we need a lot more power than other times? And if so, does that affect your job with what the reactor's doing?
Yeah, so interesting enough, we always put out the same amount of electricity day in and day out. And we put it out to the grid. In the summer or during a polar vortex, it's very critical that we continue to provide that electricity because the demand is much higher. So there's certain circumstances when, say, you're in a polar vortex or an extremely high temperature condition, where there could be situations where if another unit comes offline, say a natural gas plant, that if we don't stay online, there could be a blackout because there won't be enough electricity on the grid. So in those conditions, it's imperative that we make sure that our plant's operating to support the grid, and for folks to have the ability to have enough electricity for them to, continue their day-to-day activities.
Yeah, we talk about that a little bit in class, how we just take it for granted. We turn on a light switch and it's always there. And even our clean drinking water, someone is making sure 24/7 that that's there, and we're just spoiled. But that's super cool that you're a part of that and that we rely on you. So thank you for all you do. We are very spoiled, but we appreciate being spoiled. Now,
Yep.
As far as your job was then versus now, is it possible to explain kind of the differences between what you do versus then versus now?
Yeah. Now in my position, I'm more in a leadership and a management position where I'm managing groups of individuals that, do the more hands-on things, and I'm setting the vision and making strategic decisions for our department. So for me as an engineer, it's a little less hands-on, which I miss that piece, but it gives you a different perspective in how to manage and lead a business, and really make sure that that business or that department is functioning in a way that supports continuing to meet the demands and the goals of the company, which is to continue to provide safe and safe and carbon-free electricity. So that's more what I deal with, is more a vision and making sure we're leading a station in the right manner than the day-to-day handling and operating of the unit.
Now, your job, I'm sure, never falls short of lots of questions and small talk if you're out with friends or that. And obviously, nuclear power can be a very charged topic. So what is it that you typically say or represent of when it comes to the future of nuclear power? Is that something you see expanding? Is that something you see going away? I know that probably some people come at you pretty strong with opinions on how all that, but what is it you typically say as kind of a blanket statement for the future of nuclear power?
Yeah, nuclear has to be a part of our energy portfolio if we are ever going to achieve our goals as a country in being, reducing our carbon emissions. Solar and wind are all wonderful renewable energy sources. Unfortunately, there's no way right now to kind of have a capacity to store that energy. So when the sun isn't shining and when the wind isn't blowing, those aren't base loaded power sources that can support the grid such that everyone would be able to pull from it. So we need a base loaded energy source that will support the grid voltage. And that's what nuclear power does. It's also what gas plants do. And coal plants, however, they're not a clean energy source. So nuclear doesn't have any emissions. And that's what I think makes it such a valuable energy supply and is really necessary in order to meet our carbon goals. Right now, there isn't carbon pricing in the United States, unfortunately. So nuclear is having a very hard time competing with solar and wind, which are subsidized, which means that they get funding from the government. So it's very hard for nuclear plants to compete, which is why it's important that we continue to recognize the, emission-free power that it provides and that it gets compensated for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that response. I have so many questions. I could bother you for hours, but I do want to stick to at least some of the things I wanted to mention. I know that I wanted to ask you some advice for any students transitioning from high school to college and skills in that. Before I forget, one thing I would like to ask you, and you certainly don't have to answer, and I'd be happy to edit that out, but as a woman in the field of science, going through college in nuclear engineering and in the nuclear engineering world, what is that like that you've seen from your experiences for women? Are we pretty 50-50 men and women? Is there more or less? Are you comfortable talking about that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was the first woman at my plant that had received my senior reactor operator license. So to say that it's 50-50, we certainly aren't there yet. There's still a lot of room to improve on, females and diversity in the workplace. And, certainly is a huge focus for the company that I work for. We've come a long way in the 12 years that I've been in this industry. But I grew up working in the steel mills in Northwest Indiana and being the only female there. So it wasn't that different for me. It was very much what I was used to. But yeah, we're still not probably at a 50-50 of male to female in the workforce.
Right. Well, thank you for representing an underrepresented group. And obviously our school is super passionate on pushing for everyone, but especially our bright females, that there is so much to give to the world, and through the magic of science, please don't overlook that and forget about that. So thank you for representing that, and thank you for answering that question. I know that can be a hot topic and uncomfortable at times. So thank you. As far as like advice, skills, anything you wish you would have known or told yourself from high school, anything like that my students can learn from you, we are all ears.
Yeah. I wish someone would have sat down and told me that you really can do whatever you want to do. Throughout high school, between, English teachers, some of my guidance counselors, I told them I wanted to be an astronaut and I wanted to be an engineer. The response that I got was, you're going to be disappointed because I just don't see that you're going to be able to do that. So I never really had someone that said, yeah, you can do whatever you put your mind to. You just got to work at it. And really, that's my advice is I was not the smartest in my high school class. I came from a very small high school and I didn't have to try very hard. I got great grades without really putting in much effort. And I believed college would be the same way. And I was wrong. So I did fail a few classes my freshman year, even though I was trying very hard. And I wanted to quit. And I had a lot of people telling me that I needed to quit. But I was passionate about what I wanted, and I worked extremely hard, and I got there. And that's the same story in, license class. You're told when you go to get your reactor operator's license that 50% of your class will not pass and will not be there when the 2-year class is over.
Wow.
And so you start to doubt yourself. But if you want it bad enough, you will figure it out. So that's what I would say to people is don't let anybody tell you that you can't accomplish what you want to do, because I'm here to tell you, I'm not the smartest person, and I've been able to accomplish everything that I've set my mind to.
Well, yeah, your resume speaks for itself, and it's impressive. One thing we mentioned, I don't know if it was when we were just kind of introducing ourselves before we recorded, you mentioned about experience, and that's something I think is so important. Would you touch on just how experience over just me lecturing is obviously, there's worlds apart, and maybe talking about if there's experiences out there, where could they look or think how to get there?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I changed my major based on, experiencing something completely different than, I had been on my initial path to pursue. It's not really until you get real life experience and can actually apply what you're learning that you either decide, yeah, this is something that I want to do, or, hey, there's a different avenue that I can take. For me, sitting in a classroom and reading a book or going to lectures, it doesn't click. I really need kind of hands-on, lab and internship experiences to see how it really is applied in real life. And once I got that internship and could see how relays worked, how electrical circuits really worked, it really made sense. And it made a world of difference in my schooling, as well as made a world of difference in my decision-making on what I wanted to do with my career. I knew from my first 6 months on the job that sitting at a desk and being an engineer wasn't really what suited me. I wanted to be in a plant and operating a unit, and that's why I changed my job. And you don't know that until you go and experience it.
Yeah, I think that's so important advice. And coming from someone besides me, thank you. I thought I wanted to go to culinary school until I worked in 5 different restaurants and realized I just like to cook, but this is not my career. Experience is so important. So are there opportunities for high school students to find those smaller, interactive kind of, I don't know if we would call them internships at that age, but are there those opportunities out there, you feel?
Yeah, I know specifically like with my company, we pair up with a lot of high schools and interested students and work with them on either some of their engineering or robotics teams. We have a lot of events that we have in the community that we advertise for to give people opportunities to experience that or come and visit a nuclear power plant. And that's just for nuclear. But there are a lot of companies that are more than willing to teach and give people, a couple days, weeks of experience. And you just have to ask, make them tell you no. When I was growing up, the Challenger Space Center never had interns that were in high school. And I went there and I said, here's what I want to do. And here's what I'm going to get out of it, and proposed it to them. And, they let me in, and that was a valuable experience, but I would have never gotten it if I wouldn't have asked. So make people tell you no. If there's something you want to do in an experience, anything is possible. And those opportunities exist all over the place. I think it's just important to find folks that have a background that can help you get there. And if you don't have experience, they can certainly help you answer questions so that you even know what's available.
That is such great advice. Sometimes you have to create your own doors, and even if that door closes on you, it would have never even been partially open had you not created it. So That is great. I will continue to relay that to all my students. That's excellent advice. Thank you for that. Well, I want to value your time. I know you're a successful, busy person. I want to thank you sincerely for just getting a little glimpse into your life and your lessons, and that is so important to us because, as you know, experience from someone's point of view can be so beneficial to spark interest in other people's. So on behalf of myself and my students at Sandburg High School, we want to say a sincere thank you to you. If I do have any students who reach out to me with questions, would it be okay to field them through me to you if we had any further questions?
Absolutely. I would look forward to it.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to officially hit the unrecord button, and then I want to just close up with you. But thank you again so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.